I'm John White. One of my most commonly asked questions is why a plant has died. A lot of times that is caused by a plant that either was poorly planted or it may be a problem that you bought at the nursery. Maybe not the nursery's fault. It may have been the wholesaler that sold it to the retailer. But there is a problem in a recent tree conference in Albuquerque. A lot of those points were brought out, and I'd like to kind of summarize and go over a few things that maybe can help you to become a better consumer. If we're in a nursery and spot a plant that has a lot of roots very obvious on the surface, that's where the soil might have been washed away. It's probably a sign that the plant may have been in the nursery for a longer period of time, and it could be a sign that it may have an overgrown root system, and it may be to a point where it does cause some problems. So some of these plants should be bumped up to a larger size. If you do purchase a plant like this, it may require severing some of the roots and kind of cleaning off some of the roots so that you can have some success with it. So when we take this plant out of the container, we can see that it has a very, very large root system growing up against the side of the pot. So this plant has been in the pot for a little while, and some of those we want to maybe try and avoid. And the problems that we run across with them is the way nursery stock is started out. It started out in a small, what we call a rose pot, or a little 2-inch pot. This one was started in a 2-inch pot. This one actually came out of a 1-gallon plant. So this size pot, this plant was in that size pot, and that's all the root system we got on it. And that might be because this plant was overgrown in the 2-inch pot back at the wholesale nursery. So that's where the problem started on this particular plant. Here's a Pyracantha rootstock. You can see that a lot of this root system still has a round shape to it as it was in the pot. This was taken out of the ground, so you can kind of see this never really grew much either. And when we look at what's happened up here, we can see how those roots have grown around and really wrapped themselves around the main trunk. And as these grow in size, they exert pressure on the center of the plant, and then it end up killing the plant off. So these kind of things, again, can be avoided very early in the plant's life. This is actually an oak tree that was in a 15-gallon pot. You can see this one with the root kind of going around like this, that it hit something on the side. So this is probably where it stopped when it was in a 5-gallon pot. But you can see how the root system is kind of just stopped here. It's a big stub down here, and there's really some problems right there. So again, we kind of want to try and avoid some of those problems. We do see them a lot. There are certain species of plants that show that symptom more than others. Pyracantha is one that really shows, apparently it has a very fast-growing root system. And again, when we pop the plant out, we want to see some roots on the side, but not heavy. And again, as we plant the plant, we can tease some of these roots loose, tease some of the soil off, and that way the plant will grow into the new soil a lot faster and will do much better. But Pyracantha is one that we do seem to have a lot of problems with. Here's an example of a plant that we're buying at the nursery, and we can kind of see that a lot of the soil has already been washed off of this. We can see how some of the roots are already girdling at the top, and we can see we have a very immense root system there. So this plant may have some difficulty establishing itself because it already has a root system that is in trouble. So we want to again be careful on some of those. Another plant that is a very likely candidate for root problems is the Indian hawthorn, and this one has some nice new roots started out on the side, which is a good sign. Again, it's not heavily covered on this side, which is good, but as we look at the interior of the plant here, we can see how we've got some roots that are overlapping, overgrowing themselves, and that will cause problems later on in this plant's life. So sometimes we'll have a plant that might be 6 or 8 years old, maybe 10 years old, that is in the landscape, and all of a sudden the plant fails on you. A lot of times you can dig that plant up and come to find out that it was actually a planting problem or maybe a growth problem very early in the plant's life. So again, we want to kind of watch that. Here's a plant that also has a pretty bad root system. You can see most of the soil has been washed away from that plant, so it's kind of in trouble. But you can see all these roots, how they have been kind of knotted all together at the very start. So again, this is probably something that happened at a wholesale nursery level, with the plant in small pots. So we'd like to try and avoid some of those problems. As research comes available, that is passed on to some of the wholesale nurserymen, and some of the plant growing techniques are changed based on research. So again, those are some important things. So to have a healthier, more successful plant in your landscape, as a consumer, again, looking at some of the plant material and buying your best quality material so that you can have good quality stock. So remember, when we're planting, that we only want to plant the plant to the depth of the actual pot, but we want to make the hole somewhere around 2.5, 3, up to 5 times the width of this root ball. And so that's how big the hole is going to have to be. Again, we want to tease the roots loose, and that'll help the plant to be a lot more successful. If you dig just a very narrow, tight hole and you dig it too deep, the plant's buried too deep, that's going to cause another set of problems with the plant. But if the hole is too tight, those roots will tend to grow just kind of around in the hole, really won't leave the hole, and so they'll be almost like they're still in the pot. So we do want to, take some precautions and be careful with our plant material so that we can avoid some of the problems that we've been looking at here.